Hello guys, today we're going to be doing a video on Battlefield 2042 Season 1 update using the RTX 3060 Ti, but I wanted to go ahead and test this game out with a better CPU, so we're going to be using a Ryzen 5800X. So I'm borrowing the 5800X for this video, just to see how it runs at 1080p. The 1440p and 4K stuff isn't as reliant on your CPU, so it doesn't really matter as much. And as always, if you like what you see, a sub to the channel would be highly appreciated. Alright, starting it off, we're going to be playing the game at 1080p on the low preset. I've already been playing for a little bit, since when I actually loaded in the game, it was stuttering quite a bit and freezing up. So I just played for a little bit, waited for the game to stabilize and, you know, play at its normal frame rate, and then I was going to start recording. And now, it's been a couple minutes, and now it's finally playing smooth enough. We're still getting some stutters here and there, as you saw in the frame time graph, but mostly it feels about right. Now, playing at low settings, we do get a CPU bottleneck here and there, but in most cases, GPU is fully maxed out now, getting around 130 to 140 FPS, but we do get some dips into the 120s as well. I tried playing on the new map Exposure because they still have a playlist for Exposure 24/7, and it's Conquest, and it's 120 players, I think, or it's 128 players, and it's been 2 weeks since the season's come out, or maybe it's been a week. It's like around 2 weeks, and I couldn't find a match. So the Exposure playlist is already dead. There was like 10 players in there with me, and I waited a couple of minutes and there was no people were just leaving. So I just gave up and I joined this playlist, which is, it's got all the default maps and the portal map. So we're playing on the Battlefield 3 map, and it's 64 players, so it should be easier on our CPU. So it should be running better than it normally would, I guess, in 128 players. Now, one thing that I'm noticing is that our frame rate is kind of dropped down now. It's sitting in the 110s to 120s. And when I did a video on patch 4.0 of this game with a 3700X and a 3060 Ti, and we were getting around 90 to 120, so the frame rate is very similar, but I guess with the 5800X, our top end is way higher. We're getting like around 130 to 140 FPS, but over time it's dropping down to the 110s and 120s as well. Jumping into Discarded now, this is the map that I did the video on when update 4.0 came out. And like I was saying before, we were getting like 90 to 120 FPS with a 3700X, but I was playing on the low preset, I believe. So this is the high preset now, and frame rate is very similar to that video. And the quality, to be honest, doesn't change too much from low to high. It's just how the game looks. But frame rate is definitely taking a hit. Now we're dipping into the 90s as well. Now the game's overall feels pretty much the same. It's still very fluid, very nice. After patch 4.0, the aiming actually felt much better. It didn't feel as laggy or stuttery as it was before. It feels very smooth. Alright, now I do say this in a lot of videos, but using the presets isn't really the smartest decision you could be making. It's best to go ahead and adjust the presets to your own liking, since some settings will be very demanding while returning very limited or very small improvements in terms of quality. Or in this case, as we increase presets, our FPS drops, but our GPU usage stays the same, in around the 80s to low 90s. Let's go ahead and jump up to the Ultra preset. We maxed out. Won't be testing out ray tracing or DLSS, since I don't think we're gonna get a maxed out GPU even at Ultra, but I guess we'll see in a second. But let's go ahead and play for a little bit and see what the average FPS is gonna be. I guess we'll go from there. Now looking at our FPS, we're sitting in the high 90s. Average FPS of 95, 96. That seems about right, and once we get up top, we jump up to 110. So it's a very jumpy FPS, but it seems about right, to be honest, with this card. GPU's fully maxed out in some areas, but it will still fall down into the mid to low 80s. But I guess it's not that big of a deal as long as you're happy with the FPS. This game isn't optimized perfectly still, even though it's been out for 7 months, but you can't really expect much, I guess. There's only a couple of people that are still left working on the game. The majority of the team has already moved on for the next Battlefield, I believe, so I don't think this game will get much better than this. I guess slight improvements here and there. Now looking at the quality of the game itself, the Ultra preset doesn't look too much better compared to medium or high, let's say. I personally enjoy using the medium preset for this game, since it runs the best, and it's like a perfect middle ground for quality and performance. It looks decent, and it runs very nicely. I normally get like 120, 130 FPS with that as well. Alright, now 1080p, I would actually avoid using ray tracing, since you can't really see too many reflections anyway in this game. Everything seems very matte. Aside from that, the actual setting itself is very demanding, so you will be losing a lot of your FPS. And it's very VRAM heavy, so if you're going to play at ultra settings, you might be cutting it close. I know with the RTX 3080 at 4K, which is also very VRAM heavy, at ultra settings with ray tracing, the VRAM was fully maxed out and the game was running at like 2 or 3 FPS. So we're using 4.5 gigs, we only have 8 gigs available to us. Ray tracing, I believe, uses up 1.5 gigs, I think, and maybe 2 gigs. So I guess we still have a few gigs worth of headroom, but still, I don't think the FPS loss is worth enabling ray tracing. And DLSS, in my testing, doesn't really do much for this game, especially at 1080p, since you're most likely going to be CPU bound, and the quality loss is just way too much at 1080p in this game. It just doesn't look good. So I would avoid doing that, but at 1440p and 4K, you might be able to get away with it. Alright, I think that's it for the video, guys. Hope you enjoyed and found it useful. If you did, give it a like, and that subscription would be highly appreciated. See you next time.